Okay, whenever you're ready, Alyssa.
Almost everyone has heard of the saying, to break bread. It's a common saying that goes back thousands of years, and it literally means to share a meal with someone. But more than its dictionary definition, it means to put aside differences to build friendship through sharing. Through my senior project, I accidentally learned more about sharing than I could have ever imagined. This brings me to my senior project. I'm Alyssa, and for my senior project, I learned how to bake bread. So on the surface, this was pretty simple. I started out with the easiest bread I knew how to bake, which was white bread, admittedly a little dense and tasteless. And then I built my way up, making pizza dough, bagels, pita bread, and cranberry swirl bread. And through this process, I learned how to improve my skills and learned how to knead, measure, and adjust after I messed up every recipe. And through this process, it was empowering and enjoyable. But it also created a little bit of a problem. You see, my family of 4 could not eat the up to 4 loaves of bread we were making a week. And since fresh bread with no preservatives is only good for the first 2 or 3 days, we had nowhere to put all this excess bread. So the only solution I could find to this was to bring my bread into school to share. So when I first thought of this, I didn't like the idea at all. I was filled with doubt. What if my bread wasn't actually that good? What if people didn't want it? But with bread piling up all around my house, I had no other choice. So my first Monday, I took a few pieces of my bread and put it in a Ziploc bag and brought it to my few friends quietly. And they ate it, and they seemed to like it. And this started a Monday ritual where every morning someone would ask me, "Do you have any bread?" And I would hand out whatever bread I had made that weekend. And I noticed that after each of these encounters, they seemed a little bit happier. But after this, I had to make good on a promise I had made to my classmates. So one day, after baking a lot of bread that weekend, I brought it in to senior seminar to share. And through this, I learned 2 things. One, there is no easier way to make friends than to have a fresh piece of bread. And 2, that sharing the product of your skills is deeply satisfying. So in this experience, I solved my problem, but I also built a little bit of happiness, even if it was for only a few minutes. So this was an unexpected side effect of my bread making, but I wanted to know more about fermentation and the role it had in sharing. So fermentation is the process in which microorganisms change food culinarily over time. So when I first dove into this research, I found that many fermented foods and many cultures had spins on these common foods. For example, sauerkraut. Barbarians added caraway seeds, Germans added white wine, and Eastern Europeans added apples and raisins. And all of these recipes were shared within communities, and they went into making a community bread. So now that I knew how fermentation worked and how it was used, I wanted to know why. According to Fabulous Fermented Foods, an article by Tufts University, fermentation is as old as civilization itself, and almost every culture practices it. But that's the only answer why. The most obvious answer I found was that fermentation was used for preservation. One could put food into microorganisms, and these good microorganisms would keep out the bad ones and keep the food fresh for many months. But I also found that fermentation was important to the community beyond its practical benefits. Fermentation was used in gatherings and celebrations. Alcohol fermentation, for example, was used in palm wine in West Africa in their religious and cultural celebrations. And it even went further than this. Some experts went as far as to claim that fermentation built society as itself. Patrick McGovern, a biomolecular archaeologist at the University of Pennsylvania, went as far as to say that alcohol fermentation built religion, language, and arts. So through this exploration, I found that fermented products were made through sharing recipes within the community, but also were important to the foundations of the community themselves. So after I learned how to bake bread, and after I learned more about fermentation, I decided it was time to share what I knew. So I decided the most logical thing for me to do was to host a bread party. So I invited 3 of my friends over to my house on a cold December morning, and we got to work. We started off small. We started with the yeast blooming, and then mixing in all the ingredients. But then we got to the part that I dreaded, kneading. I had only just learned how to do this myself, and I had no idea how I was going to explain this to other people. So after much for me to explain, and then showing them and trying to explain again, they finally got it to a point where I thought that their bread would rise. And even though this took a little patience, it was worth it to teach the technique and to have fun in the process. And in the end, we all got final loaves that we could enjoy. And through this, I found that more than sharing physical things, we could all share experiences to build a community of friends. Happiness is not so much in having as sharing. We make a living by what we get, and we make a life by what we give, by Norman McElwain. Through learning how to bake bread and discovering more about fermentation, I learned a lot more about sharing and used this to unintentionally strengthen the community. Through handing out bread, I found that even though it was difficult to trust in my process, it was important because of the joy it brought to myself and others. Through discovering more about fermentation, I learned that sharing and fermentation are actually entangled in a rich history that spans around the world. And through my bread party, I learned that sharing experiences builds friendship. Personally, I learned that it's impossible to learn anything without sharing. When I first got started, I couldn't make any of my bread without using the recipes that others had shared online. And I couldn't learn all the technique without using videos and the shared experiences of experts at bread making. Through my project, I learned that sharing has an unprecedented ability to bring joy to ourselves and others, and that is why it is so important. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you.